What if I told you that the majority of people's physical problems really isn't physical, it's mainly mental or emotional anxiety issues? Well, we have a special guest today, and we're going to talk a lot about this here on Choosing Your Future, episode 028.
Life is not about you living in the past. It's not about you living in fear. It's about your dreams. It's about what you believe. Life is about you. Choosing your future.
Lessons for the future begin here.
Welcome to Choosing Your Future podcast. This is episode 028, part 4. And the topic we've been dealing with for the last few episodes is worry, anxiety, and stress, how it affects your future. And we've talked a lot about some of the basically statistics of what's going on with anxiety and how it's affecting everybody. But we have a special guest today. And before I get into that, first of all, let me tell you, thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, make sure you check out the website, choosingyourfuture.org. You can check out the Instagram, Facebook, all that good social media stuff. And let us know you're listening. We're getting some great comments. You can listen to us on many different venues, whichever is your personal favorite or your personal way. Some people just have their favorites. So whatever it is, hey, let us know you're listening. And we really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. Hope it's helping you. And if it does, share it with somebody. That way they can enjoy it too. So in the podcast studio today, we have Brandy Edwards.
Hello.
Hey, Brandy. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, my name's Brandy. I am 33 years old. I'm married, and I have 3 boys. I worked as a mental health therapist for almost 10 years, and about 18 months ago, after we had our 3rd son, I got to become a stay-at-home mom.
So you worked actually in the mental health field.
Yes.
Now, here's a little disclaimer. Brandy is related to my cousin, and that's probably why he married her, because we both need mental health help at some point in time. No, but I've watched her handle her kids, and it's amazing. She's got a really great way of dealing with children. And I wanted her on the show today because I wanted her to talk a little bit, and maybe we could discuss some of the issues that children go through with anxiety.
Sure.
What are maybe some hidden triggers or hidden signs that kids may be going through anxiety?
Okay. So in kids, a lot of times anxiety might look like a behavior issue. Mm-hmm. So like if your child is, always having a stomach ache in the morning, not wanting to go to school, or unexplained headaches, things like that, can be some of the triggers. They don't always just come out and say, I'm afraid of this, or I'm worried about this.
Because they may not even know.
Right. They don't have the terminology that we do to be able to say, I'm worried or I'm afraid. And just kind of on the clinical side, it's hard to kind of ask that question, when the kid comes in and you're going through all the symptoms, just trying to tease apart like what's going on.
Right. And
they aren't able to say, well, I'm afraid or I'm worried. And even when you use those words, they still don't really understand.
They don't connect the dots.
They don't connect the dots.
Now, it's interesting. You say, that may show up in a stomach ache or something like that. Mm-hmm. Adults are dealing with some of the same issues, but they don't even realize it's anxiety.
Sure, yeah.
And that's kind of where we've been talking about for the last few episodes. They don't even realize that they're dealing with anxiety. I've told people on the program is that it starts out with anxiety. Anxiety is uncertainty of something. It's uncertainty of future, which leads to worry, which is kind of an imaginary thought of what could happen. Or there's really no proof it's going to happen.
Right.
We think the worst.
Right.
And then that leads to stress. Absolutely. Which releases adrenaline.
Yes.
Adrenaline's got to go somewhere.
Right.
That's why they say if you exercise, you don't have a lot of stress.
Sure.
That's the fight mode. The flight mode is doing nothing.
Fight
It
or
builds
flight,
up.
right.
Yep, it builds up, and then the next thing you know, you've got this problem building up on the inside of you, and it's got to go somewhere. It's going to affect something.
Yes.
Something affects something. So it could affect us physically. It mimics a lot of illnesses that some people think they have, but actually, when they go to the doctor, they say, "Well, you don't have that." And what it is,
Right.
what it ends up being, is just the root of it is anxiety.
Sure.
So how would you say one of the best ways to help a child, if you recognize it, and what is the best way to help a child deal with their anxiety?
Well, it kind of depends on what level they're dealing with anxiety, because a certain level of anxiety is normal.
Right.
We all experience anxiety
Right.
in different ways, and it's normal for a child to have it clinically. It's diagnosable if it interferes with your daily functioning. So like as an adult, if you're not able to go to work, if you're not able to care for your family, as a child, if you're can't function at school, if you're having to, call the parents to come pick them up, if they're not going to school, then it's interfering with your life and it's diagnosable. And at that point, you would want to seek treatment, for your kid, get them in therapy. And there's a lot of different types of therapy. The most common one is called cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's a triangle, and it teaches kids that their thoughts affect their feelings and their feelings affect their behaviors. So throughout treatment, you have to teach them to recognize the intrusive thoughts, the negative thoughts, and teach them to stop those thoughts and to turn them more positive. Because if you're thinking positive, then you feel positive and you act positive.
Okay, so that's interesting, the triangle, because it kind of comes, here's an oxymoron, full circle, So it goes back to retraining thoughts.
Absolutely.
I like what you said, that the fact is, some anxiety is kind of normal, but when it causes you to not function,
Yes.
and we got a lot of people not functioning,
Yeah.
just basically because of anxiety. Mm-hmm. So when we say retraining, we talk a lot about that on this program, reprogramming your mind, renewing your mind. I mean, the Bible's very, I love the science, the psychology, and the spiritual biblical approach. The Bible is very plain about renewing our mind, whatever things are pure, whatever things are just, whatever things are praiseworthy, whatever things are holy. Meditate, think on these things. How would you go about reprogramming? Could you give like a classic example of how to reprogram a child's mind? Because we got some adults that are saying, and I'm one of them, it's hard to reprogram my own mind.
Sure.
Much less a 2-year-old who is mobile.
Right. Yeah. It takes a lot of practice, honestly. I mean, it's not something that you just do once and, okay, I'm good to go. You practice it just like anything else. So like if let's say a child is having problems in math, I'm bad at math. I'm not good at math. I'll never get this. Then you teach them to recognize the thought, first of all, because how often are we talking to ourselves and don't even realize all the negative things we're saying? So the first step is teaching them to be aware, and then to be able to stop the thought and go back and say, I'm having trouble in math, but I can do all of these other things in math.
So really it kind of starts with your words.
It absolutely does. And a big part of that, you were asking, how do you help a child? Their thoughts a lot of times come from our words.
Well, that's true.
So what we say to them, if you tell your child you're bad at math, even on accident, a lot of times we're guilty of labeling our kids like, oh, this one's not good at math, or this is my strong-willed child, or this is my this child or that child.
This is my special child.
Special child, whatever. We don't intentionally say those things, but you're telling that child, oh, I'm the one that's bad at math, and
Yeah.
it sticks.
And when we say special child, we're saying something like, he acts just like his daddy.
Yes.
Or, she acts just like her mama.
Yes.
They're special that way, you know. I mean, we
Right.
get it. We get into now. All of a sudden, the kid's going to develop a complex,
Yes.
and if dad makes failures or mom makes failures, then the next thing you know, this kid's already got anxiety built up. I'm going to make failures too because dad did
Absolutely.
it, and we're programmed that way, and so on and so forth. And so we actually, by words, create anxiety.
We can. Yes.
So, you know, there's one thing I've learned that negative speech, and this has been scientifically proven, releases cortisol in the system, which is a stress hormone, which affects a lot of people physically. I mean, it causes a lot of physical problems. So you're saying, and I totally agree with this, the more we change the wordage, if you will, or verbiage, to more of from an I can't to I can, to more of, what we're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not saying we're condoning what kids do. We're not coddling what they do, but what we're
Right.
doing is affirming what they can do.
Yes.
Which
And
is-
just reframing it. You know, it's a glass half empty, glass half full type of thing. You can look at the one thing that I can't do, or you can look at the 10 things that you can do to try and overcompensate. And it's really just reframing the way that they're thinking, you know, because when you have anxiety and depression, because the numbers like 3 and 4 who have anxiety also have depression. Those two are comorbid most of the time. Your thought patterns are negative.
Well, this is something because I had this down. It says excessive worrying and high anxiety, if go untreated, they can lead to depression and even suicidal thoughts.
Absolutely.
Right now in our country, we have a high suicidal rate. I mean, it's through the roof right now. I think they say it's the highest it's ever been. And what I've learned is anxiety triggers worry, worry triggers stress, stress triggers frustration, and frustration says, I can't, there's no hope.
Sure.
You know, it kind of does that thing. And when you get to that point, it's like the walls are closing in on you. I think people need to understand it's not too late.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's always hope.
Always.
Always hope. Now you may have to dig a little bit to get out of the pit, but there's hope. One thing that's concerning me in our society is everybody's on the cannabis kick. And, you know, we're saying, well, we need to get rid of these chemical drugs in order to deal with our anxiety and go more natural. And my thinking is that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think if we're dependent upon anything to help with our issues, that's still a dependency problem to where we've got to learn to deal with anxiety, whether it's with chemical or whatever we're using, whether it's food, coffee, I don't care what it is. Somewhere along the line, we've got to get to a place where we're happy in ourselves,
Yes.
and we've got a joy within ourselves, and our minds are going in the right directions. What if they get rid of all the chemicals? What processes? What if they get rid of all the cannabis stuff? What if they God forbid, get rid of coffee? Everybody's going to be in a zombie apocalypse then. But I mean, you know, seriously. We've got to learn to not be dependent upon things and more focused inwardly, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to start dealing with issues, because anything can be a crutch.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And ultimately, it's a Band-Aid. It's not ever going to fix the problem. It might control symptoms, but it's not going to fix it.
You know, that's the thing. There's only one thing that can truly fix any problem that you've got, and that's when you learn to turn everything over to something higher than yourself. That's God.
Yeah.
You know, He does a lot, but He also expects us to do things too. But you got to at least admit He's there. See you next time on Choosing Your Future.
Thank you for listening to the Choosing Your Future podcast. For more information, please visit choosingyourfuture.org. That's choosingyourfuture.org.